My name is Alex Traynor, and I'm the Community Engagement Director at the American Museum of the Free Publication Distribution Box. We're excited to welcome you to our online video tour, which is the same as the audio tour, just with boring contemplative footage added to it. Hopefully that emulates the experience of walking up to a stop with headphones on, scanning a QR code, and then awkwardly standing around for 3 minutes. Thank you in advance for watching every single second of this tour. I hope you have a great time. Or not. I don't even care. Fucking sick of this shit. Right now, you are standing in front of the remnants of a foregone era. Once a vital fabric in the tapestry that is the American city, these plastic boxes have fallen into disregard. And if you take a closer look, you might ask yourself, what were these things? What was the stuff that they held? Has that stuff become history? For the next 45 or so minutes, you will take a tour with us through the bustling metropolis known as Hartford, Connecticut, and learn more than you ever thought you would about the distribution of free publications. But first, a word from our museum's founder, Bert Crinklethorne.
Some might see the objects in front of you as giant pieces of garbage. I was one of them, until I took ayahuasca. It made me realize that the things we take for granted could teach us valuable lessons on the lasting nature of impermanence. And then I puked a whole bunch.
This tour will examine its collection from both socio-cultural and post-colonial perspectives, as well as from neo-structuralist, proto-semiotic, anti-hierarchical, prehistoric, and trans-exclusionary radical feminist perspectives.
These boxes have been abandoned for years, and while you'll no longer find papers in them, you might just find yourself.
Our museum is the proud Guinness World Record holder for most metaphors. In creating it, we consulted with thousands of scholars and academics to hear their perspectives on these treasures. Just listen to Professor Stephen Hawking.
The best way to visualize a wormhole is to think about the boxes on the sidewalk near bus stops. Everyone tells me to shut up about them. Honestly, they are so fascinating. None of my work on theoretical physics would have gotten anywhere without them.
Through the use of state-of-the-art audio technology, this tour will captivate your senses. Prepare to be amazed as the past comes to life through the power of sound. Let the immersive experience surround you. Follow the instructions at the conclusion of each stop to navigate your way onto the next. If you get lost, remember that all of our boxes are located at the intersection of race, culture, and identity.
Just because something smells like urine doesn't mean it can't highlight the struggles that traditional print media faces in an increasingly digital world.
With funding generously provided by our principal financier, Jeffrey Epstein, our mission is to inspire younger generations. As a no-profit organization, we seek to preserve this overly specific part of our nation's history. So get ready to take a journey with us, to have your mind blown, and to start thinking outside the box.
Take a right and proceed down Main Street for 2 blocks. Then take a right onto Central Row. Stop number 2 will be at the bus stop across the street from the old State House. Do not accidentally get on the bus.
Close your eyes and imagine it's the year 1923. A trolley whizzes by. It's the Roaring 20s, and there's news from all around the globe.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Well, this ain't Newsies. Instead, let's imagine it's 2003. You just got off a 14-hour shift at Burger King, and you're waiting for the bus.
Let me tell you, it was no Disney musical. If anyone started singing, it was because they were on crystal meth.
Back then, there were no smartphones. If you wanted a distraction from your intrusive suicidal thoughts, your only option was to pick up a paper.
In the 1920s, you'd read about Charles Lindbergh flying over the Atlantic. But by the 2000s, the only place people were flying was into the World Trade Center.
So instead of reading stories from all around the globe, the people waiting for the bus turned to a new newspaper. A newspaper without news. Something called a free publication. While they might have appeared to be legitimate sources of information, they were oftentimes literally 100% ads.
The free papers were usually hyper-fixated on a single subject, for instance, used cars. They contained pages and pages of makes, models, mileage information, and offered little else to say. They didn't have a term for this type of journalism at the time, but today we refer to it as autism.
Since their invention, coincidentally around the same time as the polio vaccine, their popularity grew exponentially, a signifier of the public's waning trust in traditional media. People would rather directly read advertisements than read George W. Bush's propaganda.
It's time we address the C word. And no, I don't mean my ex-wife, I mean capitalism. Just like that stupid bitch, all it cares about is money.
The rich got richer, while the poor sat here, waited for the bus, and daydreamed about one day being able to afford a used car they'd never be able to afford because the system was rigged against them by business interests that had conspired to develop a media apparatus that would oversaturate public spaces with promotional materials specifically designed to keep them in just the right amount of poverty that they remain subservient to the ruling classes.
Too often does history tell the stories of the rich and powerful and ignores the stories of the people that went to Burger King. Maybe if Doris Kearns Goodwin had to eat a Whopper at a bus stop, she'd understand that.
Now open your eyes, both literally and metaphorically. You're back in the present day, you're enlightened, and guess what? You're now a socialist. Hopefully we've inspired you to organize a militia to stage a violent coup against the government and seize the means of production while you still have the chance. Disclaimer, by listening to this audio tour, you are now on an FBI watch list.
To continue your tour, make your way back to Main Street and take a right, the opposite of the direction you came in. Stop number 3 is in front of City Steam Brewery.
Please check for any unmarked surveillance vans that may be following you.
The other day, I was using a butt plug, and I thought to myself, how did this get here? Not into my butthole, but from the butt plug factory in China. Here I was, pleasuring myself in the bathroom of a Panera Bread, hit with the realization that for all these years, I had been taking for granted the global supply chain that was helping deliver me to climax. Just like I had been ignoring the lived experiences of those who delivered these papers. So let's ask, what was it like to be a newspaper distributor? Well, for a while, they were living large. Independent contractors before that became just a loophole for companies to not give people benefits. They could set their own hours and then party all night long. Here are some of their stories.
Back then, I was stuffing 3-4 boxes at a time. And I was delivering these papers.
Yeah, I did a lot of drugs while I was on the job. Booze, cocaine, ayahuasca. Usually by the end of my route, I was completely naked, screaming at the top of my lungs and trying to light myself on fire.
It was hard being a woman in a man's world because, as you know, women couldn't legally drive in the 1980s. I had to carry the bundles over my head like I was carrying a bucket of water.
Downtown Hartford was a scary place. I can't even count the number of times I had to lock my car doors because I saw a black person.
Nothing can get in my way. Potholes, red lights, pedestrians. When I saw school buses extend their little stop signs, I put the pedal to the metal. Sure, I killed a bunch of kids.
Truly enlightening. By listening to the lived experiences of those who devoted their lives to a meaningless task just so some rich guy could buy a bigger boat, we can better understand how pointless life really is. May their stories serve as reminders for us to live as abundantly as we possibly can before we eventually die of exhaustion in a butt plug factory. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to attend to. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. Fuck yeah.
Make your way down Main Street and then take a left onto Church Street. Stop number 4 is at the corner of Church and Trumbull.
If you need to use the bathroom, do not use the one at Panera Bread. Trust me.
They might look outdated now, but once upon a time, these boxes were seen as style icons.
With their smooth textures and sensuous curves, they made all those metal rectangles look like squares. They turned the sidewalk into a runway.
They brought high fashion to the streets and revolutionized the art of self-expression. Take, for instance, the box in front of you.
It's genius. House on the outside, houses on the inside. As a way to say, open me up, reach inside, make yourself at home.
An early example of the aesthetic style, camp, their extravagantly vibrant designs deviated from the typical utilitarian form.
In the words of musician Katy Perry, word on the street, you got something to show me. Magical, colorful, Mr. Mystery. Come on, baby, let me see what you're hiding underneath. I want to see your peacock cock cock, your peacock cock, your peacock cock cock, your peacock cock.
Though to some, the way these boxes looked was controversial. They weren't ready for change. In a 2005 article, the Hartford Courant referred to these boxes as
tacky
and a
mishmash of colors and shapes.
A clear example of prejudice, since these were some of the first openly gay newspaper boxes.
I would argue that these boxes did more for gay rights than, say, Harvey Milk. They stood there, loud and proud, while the bigots at the Hartford Courant tried to tear them down.
These boxes showed the world that it didn't matter if you were gay, straight, pansexual, queer, sapiosexual, asexual, demi-romantic, polyamorous, or Puerto Rican. Even in the face of adversity, you could still distribute used car ads. And you could look good doing it. By sharing the stories of LGBTQ BOC, we are highlighting our commitment to telling you how woke we are. And while we're at it, we might as well do a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we stand was once the ancient home of the dinosaurs. We honor the ancestral homes of the velociraptor, pterodactyl, and brontosaurus, and recognize that because all plastic comes from fossil fuels, we basically made these boxes out of their corpses. In acknowledging this Cretaceous period, we express our gratitude for the opportunity to, as a species, destroy these lands and destabilize the environment without the assistance of a meteor. Amen.
Take a left onto Trumbull Street and continue a few hundred feet. Stop number 5 will be just before the corner of Trumbull and Pratt.
If you need wheelchair assistance, please call 911.
If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
That was a quote from Sun Tzu in his 5th century BC free publication, The Art of War. And in the eyes of the government, it was war. Just listen to leaked audio from President Richard Nixon.
If people want to read about the various crimes I'm committing, they're gonna have to pay for it. Free newspapers are communism.
But no one could stop their spread, and it gave rise to a rogue army of delivery drivers.
Back then, you distributed these papers whatever way you could, like napalm, bodegas, Chinese restaurant lobbies, bus stops, whatever you had to do to get people to pick these up. You did. It's what separated the paper boys from the paper men.
In the middle of the night, soldiers in minivans would drop off more boxes. Innocent civilians were being bombarded with promotional materials.
When I think about the things I did in the Vietnamese supermarket on New Britain Avenue, those people just wanted to get bok choy.
Eventually, our public officials began to turn a blind eye to these atrocities, as evidenced in this exclusive transcript from the deleted emails of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
I've been informed that the free newspaper boxes on the sidewalk have been classified as torture by the Geneva Convention. As someone who places the priorities of corporate America above all else, I say we make more of them. Also, I'm a pedophile.
While the weapons have changed, and boxes are no longer being used as objects of psychological warfare, it's important to remember that the conflict is not over. Marketing is all around you, hidden in plain sight. Anyone could be trying to sell you something. We'd like to take a minute to thank our local sponsor, Raytheon, For years, Raytheon has produced the highest quality drones and missiles, and no one is better at accidentally killing civilians. They will gladly facilitate your next war crime. Please go to their showroom in East Hartford today, and you'll be saying in no time, bye-bye, Muslims.
Continue down Trumbull Street until it intersects with Asylum Street. Take a right and cross the street. Stop number 6 will be at the bus stop near the corner.
Please note, flash photography is not allowed, as this might trigger our boxes that suffer from PTSD and send them into a killing rampage.
In the 1950s, newspaper boxes were expected to look and behave a certain way. But by the mid-70s, some boxes refused to answer to the man.
They were dirty and grimy, and they didn't care about what you thought about them. They stood right up to the establishment and they said, "Don't try to clean us, you wankers."
It was anarchy. The streets became mosh pits. After a long night, you'd often find them face down on the sidewalk. With their broken door handles and graffiti tattoos, they subverted all of the conventional norms of distribution.
You're expecting newspapers, Mr. Policeman? Too bad. Here's a mountain of rubbish. You can shove it right up Margaret Thatcher's cunt.
They made it clear that they'd rather be full of garbage than sell the establishment's lies. These boxes were unruly, they were rebellious, and they smelled like shit. Though eventually, their hard partying lifestyles would catch up with them. They became riddled with sexually transmitted diseases.
I'm not gonna say whether or not I was the one who was putting used condoms into these boxes, but I will tell you that in accordance with Megan's Law, I'm obligated to inform you that I'm a registered sex offender.
The publishers made their money and then left them to rot out on the street. Each year, in cold weather, more and more boxes are run over by snowplows, while the public chooses to turn a blind eye.
They're gross to look at. They're not contributing anything to society. I say we round them up and burn them all. Wait, were you talking about the boxes? I thought we were talking about homeless people.
Like the papers they distributed, and actual living, breathing human beings, their lives were considered disposable. Soon, they will disappear from our streets. But their anti-consumerist message will live on forever, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, floating for eternity with the rest of the plastic. It's time for the Kids Corner! Inside this box are interactive toys donated by members of your community. We invite all young ones to play with our assortment of broken glass bottles, discarded needles, and balloons. Brought to you in partnership with Quest Diagnostics.
Go back towards the way you came on Asylum Street. Take a right onto Trumbull and then a left onto Pearl Street. Stop number 7 will be near the trash can on the corner on the right side of the street.
Public health notice. Operate off the assumption you have chlamydia and get tested accordingly.
Since the dawn of civilization, the free publication has existed in some form or another. The origins of AutoShopper can be traced back to advertising for used mastodons on cave walls. The Employment Guide can be traced back to the slave auction. As technology changes, so do the methods of communicating the exchange of goods and services. And no method has been as revolutionary as the computer. Just listen to 106-year-old grandmother and TikTok sensation Doris Brown remember what it was like in the before times.
Back in my day, if you wanted to advertise your yard sale, you had to chop the tree down yourself. Then go to the ocean. You have to scare an octopus to get his ink. Then shave off your pubic hair and make it into a brush. Or maybe that was just me.
In the 1980s, a man by the name of Al Gore invented the internet, and for the free publication industry, it signaled the beginning of the end. This interconnected series of tubes would revolutionize the way we access free information.
I mean, why even leave your house at all when you can watch any hole you want? A pussy hole, a mouth hole, an asshole. Get filled to the brim and really overflowing with hot, juicy cum.
For about 4 seconds, the internet promised to connect people and democratize information. Right before it went and did the opposite of both of those things.
I understand that for the users on our platform, Facebook, it's difficult to differentiate between fact and fiction. Just the other day, I bought something that promised it would enlarge my penis by 4 inches. And it didn't work. I'm still at 1.
Once a trusted resource, the World Wide Web has become overrun with disinformation and advertising. Does that story sound familiar? Yeah, because it's the same thing that happened with newspapers. No matter the technology, the story keeps repeating itself.
When I invented the internet, I created it specifically as a place to buy used cars. I thought it would make it easier to find one, but now I find myself agonizing over all my options, trying to find the most fuel efficient. And I realize it's just as hard as it ever was.
As local businesses shifted their focus to digital marketing, the industry collapsed. Throughout the years, thousands of newspaper publishers took up their swords and committed the ancient Japanese ritual of seppuku. Disemboweling themselves to restore honor to their family names. The age of advertising flyer disguised as newspaper had come to a close. So raise your cans of Four Loko to the sky and pour one out for free publications. The original influencer.
Continue down Pearl Street and take a right onto Main Street, across the street from the Wadsworth Antoneum.
Find us on Truth Social under the handle Hartford Box Museum.
In every museum's life, there comes a time for it to get really preachy. That time is now. It's time to stand up and take a stand against the museum industrial complex.
It is an outrage that the billionaire class gets to circle jerk and shape the narratives of history, while the rest of us are left to masturbate out on the street.
The story of America gets to be written by wealthy elites that never had to buy a used car, never had to live in a sketchy apartment, and never had to shit their pants because they couldn't find a public bathroom. Through their philanthropic tax write-offs, they influence what gets to be remembered, which conveniently is not the fact that they started the opioid crisis.
How come when they go around collecting garbage and asking for money, people call them museum curators? But when I do it, everyone says, Linda, you're addicted to heroin.
The museum we're standing in front of, the Wadsworth Athenaeum, was founded by the Nepo baby son of a slave-owning military contractor that profited from a war that killed tens of thousands. Yet their website refers to him merely as art patron, and we're expected to inform our worldviews through his collection of vases he thought were cool.
I'm sick of walking around a stupid Athenaeum and pretending I get it. I don't even know what the word means. I'm not book smart. If only there was a museum on the street for people that are street smart.
Cultural institutions want you to think critically, but not critically enough that you realize that you don't need a group of faux intellectuals to tell you which squiggles are the good squiggles. By allowing the Illuminati to bestow legitimacy and importance upon a bunch of random crap, we are letting them write the definitions of both art and history.
If you're the one telling the story, you can be as manipulative as you want. Organizations often use that power to omit certain things they don't want people talking about, like how Richard Gladwell, the former director of the National Air and Space Museum, raped and murdered a 14-year-old girl, and how the Smithsonian paid all of his legal fees. Look it up.
No museum should be trusted, except us. Already, the other museums, who are threatened by our anti-establishment message, have begun to spread disinformation. They say that this is all a joke, that we made most of this stuff up, that our founder, Bert Crinklethorne, isn't a real person. And to that we say, fuck yourself.
Can an unauthorized metatextual street museum be just as legitimate as any other museum? Yes, it can. Can it tell the story of the American dream by using trash as a framing device? Yes, it can. Can it make an attempt to justify its own existence by hiring a Barack Obama impersonator on Craigslist? Yes, it can. But it wouldn't have to, because I am the real Barack Obama.
We are under constant threat by art's greatest enemy, bureaucracy. Our political enemies at the Hartford Department of Sanitation might say that we needed something called permission to do this. But ask yourself, did George Washington ask permission to free America? Did Martin Luther King ask permission to dream? Did Jesus ask permission to die for our sins? History is made by those who challenge the status quo, and we dared to make a museum that wasn't boring. So it's time we rise up and burn the Wadsworth to the ground. Is that too far? Did I take it too far? Okay, don't do that.
Continue down Main Street, past Arch Street. The final stop on our tour is at the corner of Main and Linden.
Don't forget to open the box and check out our gift shop.
We've made it to the final stop on our tour, and also its most obnoxious part, the personal statement. To truly tell the story of this fake museum, we must start at a seminal moment in history, my parents' divorce. In its aftermath, my father took a part-time job delivering the Hartford Advocate. Eventually, he turned that gig into a whole career and went on to control the distribution of almost every free paper in Connecticut. In March 2020, I took over his business, and with the assistance of COVID-19, I ran it into the ground. Which means that what you're standing in front of is my inheritance. Seriously. I did what many white men have done before me and turned the family fortune into a monument to my own ego. I had a lot less to work with than the guy who built the castle across the street, so I had to get creative, just so I could get off on the thrill of having you stare at a pile of junk that is personally important to me. Hopefully, me patronizingly urging you to question your surroundings will make both of us come together and help bring the world the post-nut clarity it truly needs. But really, it's just comedy. And who am I? Some idiot who once thought to himself, wouldn't it be funny to think about these things like they're the remains of an ancient civilization? And then took that joke way too far. Like working on it for multiple years far. Was it a huge waste of time? Sure. But I used to deliver newspapers, so the bar was pretty low. Also, I'll let you in on a secret. Nothing matters. So you might as well waste your time doing things that excite you. And what excited me was the thought that someday, some random person would stumble across this, go down the rabbit hole, and be shocked at how much effort I put into this parody museum. At the heart of it, I'm just another crazy guy yelling stuff out onto the street, except I have better production values. And I'd rather be here with the rest of the wackos, making art out of our crackpot arguments, than in some big stuffy building arguing over their validity. The best art is temporary, it's provocative, and it's created by me. And by me, I mean everyone who does it just for the hell of it, who dumps it out into the world and says, take it or leave it. The people who fund these places want to clean up our cities. They want to get rid of their character and replace it with luxury condos. Soon, everything that smells like piss will be gone, including these boxes, and Hartford won't look the same without them. Think about it, they're probably in the background of nearly every photo that's been taken here for 50 years. Historians will just say that they were newspaper boxes, ignoring that they were much, much more specific than that, and they'll ignore how thoroughly they influenced the lives of broke people. So I say, if we want to remember when cities had personality, why not use these boxes as an example? But yeah, I'm biased. These things have been a huge part of my life, and I don't want to see them go. I've been delivering papers to them since I was 11. Riding around in a minivan on the weekends my dad got custody, they were my first coworkers. I started delivering the second I could drive. And when I was in my 20s, living in New York and doing sketch comedy, I couldn't get a real job. So I drove up every week and cleaned out the garbage people filled these with. Now, I'm in my 30s, I've gone batshit insane, and they're the main exhibit in my unauthorized trash museum that starts right outside of City Hall. They've always been there for me. They're my history. And I didn't work this shitty, soul-crushing job for decades just to have everyone forget the concept of its existence. I think it's incredibly fitting that the Museum About Free Publications contains very little actual information about them, and instead is mostly just an ad for something else. In this instance, my comedy career. Is it disappointing that there's yet another institution that claims to preserve the cultural heritage of everyone, but is actually about preserving the legacy of just one guy? Sure. But what did you expect? It was free.
The American Museum of the Free Publication Distribution Box was written and produced by me, Alex Traynor, unless this was the kind of thing that would get me a fine, in which case I had nothing to do with it. Acting by Rich Armstead, Lauren Brickman, John Sartori, Max Brand, Marshall Stratton, Deepfake Hillary Clinton, Jason Kay, Nicole Conlon, Tom Hu, Sam Horwitz, Kevin Murphy, Doris Brown, Jesse Vandenberg, Jajan Tesfa, and Ryan Farrell. Graphic design by Shane Helmick. Special thanks to Charlie Traynor and Adrian Paulding. Visit us online at boxmuseum.org and on Instagram under the username Hartford Box Museum.